one of the things I said in the immediate wake of the horrific assassination attempt on Trump's life that left one of his supporters dead was that in terms of the response to that, particularly the political response, people should really be mindful and patient for the investigation to conclude before they jump to conclusions, especially as, and these calls seem to have already evaporated, but as there were calls for unity. And I thought it would be beautiful if we could try to make something positive out of what was just a horrific event and use it as an opportunity, as a reminder of the importance of toning down rhetoric, lowering the temperature, and uniting as Americans. Well, quickly, MAGA, and some people on the left, but most prominently, we're seeing very prominent MAGA figures instead use this as an opportunity to further divide. And what I have for you in this segment is some reporting about the background of the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, and his family background and his interests that would yield a conclusion very different than the ones that MAGA folks are immediately jumping to. And so before we get to what is some stunning reporting about the Trump campaign's knowledge of and tracking of the Crooks family, not them super individually, but them being a part of a network of people they were tracking as really pro-gun, pro-Trump people that they could then advertise to, I want to first remind you of the type of stuff we're hearing. Because instead of the type of unity that some were hoping for in the wake of this horrific event, instead, what we're seeing is from these prominent MAGA folks, let's use this as an opportunity to say all of the left, all of our political opponents, they are the same thing as the wannabe assassin. They're the same thing as the person who murdered a supporter, a member of that crowd. Even as we get more information, well, I should say, regardless, even if this were a left-winger, to try to characterize just rank-and-file Democrats as wannabe assassins is super dangerous and divisive, and also particularly outrageous, as we're learning that this seems to be someone who is very conservative. So we'll go through it. As I keep saying, I'm humble about this, open to different possibilities, which is why I want the investigation to wrap up before I make big, bold proclamations. But because so much misinformation is being pushed and so many conclusions are being jumped to, I at least need to update you on what's currently known. So first, here's an example of what we're hearing from people like Eric Trump.
They have done everything to try and strip him of his wealth and of his fame. They've tried to break up our family. They've done everything possible to try and get him and kill him. And they literally tried to kill him this week. And despite that, he's...
Who is they? Do you understand how dangerous that is? You're telling your followers that we, just people who are Democrats, or people like Letitia James who went after his wealth, I guess, is what Eric Trump's mentioning. And I guess prosecutors, they're all the same they somehow. And then that same they is the they he's saying tried to kill Trump. Now, a registered Republican gun enthusiast tried to kill Trump, which doesn't change how horrific that attempt was, or doesn't change the heartbreaking nature of the loss of life that did take place with the Trump supporter. But it does push back on even further the absurdity of what is being said. March of the Greens saying, pray for America. The left wants a civil war. They've been trying to start one for years. These people are sick and evil. And then she goes on to say, all of us on the right want peace, security, equal justice, freedom, and prosperity for all Americans. Trying times ahead. Hold fast to your faith and God. These people are sick and evil. Just the left. But then we learn he seems to come from, and I'll give you more about him directly, but this is talking about he comes from such a pro-Trump family that this family was on the radar of the Trump campaign.
Channel 4 News can reveal that Thomas Crooks' father, the owner of the rifle that was used to shoot at Donald Trump, was held on a database and profiled by the former president's election campaign and identified by them as a strong Republican supporter, gun owner and hunter. The information was compiled as part of a secret Republican project to gather data on millions of gun owners across America and use it to target pro-gun messages in the run-up to the 2016 election. And here's why they did it. The city of Pittsburgh is a key battleground in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania, so voters here are always heavily profiled and targeted by political parties, like the Trump campaign in 2016, which held voters' details on a database, including, as we've discovered, the shooter's family, Matthew Crooks and his wife Mary, who lived here at 2506 Milford Drive in Bethel Park. We know they profiled them using secret computer models to identify likely gun owners and enthusiasts, and Mr. Crooks scored very highly, 0.99 out of 1 for being a gun owner and 0.95 out of 1 for being a hunter. In fact, out of more than 19,000 people in Bethel Park who were profiled, Mr. Crooks was in the top 20, and the database classified him as a strong GOP or Republican voter.
And that's talking about Thomas Crooks's parents. So then you could absolutely imagine a situation where he wasn't aligned with them. That situation becomes less likely as you learn that he's a registered Republican, as you learn that the $15 donation to a progressive cause whenever he would have been 17 was documented from someone named Thomas Crooks. And there's a different Thomas Crooks that would have been older, and it would have made more sense in the same or similar area. And as you learn that he had on his body a gun enthusiast influencer merch shirt on. So he was representing his sort of pro-Second Amendment, pro-firearms political stance, which isn't exclusive to Republicans. I've met Democrats who want more regulations but also just like guns, and that's perfectly fine. But it does make it less likely, for sure. I think we can all admit, especially as he's a registered Republican, and you have this reporting as well.
Investigators dressed in plain clothes as well as FBI agents approach this house. That's where the family of Thomas Crooks lives, which is right here on Milford Drive. Then we started to see those agents going door to door, canvassing the neighborhood and speaking with people who live here. They're trying to get answers to the many questions that still remain. Crooks's motive is still unclear. Records show he is a registered Republican, and neighbors today told us that they've actually seen Trump signs outside of the home over the course of the last few years.
So Trump signs outside of the home. And then you also have, just to bolster that, this as well.
Neighbor Kelly Little had few answers for the FBI and just as many questions herself. She said until recently there were pro-Trump signs in the Crooks' front yard.
There absolutely was MAGA supporting things for a while.
Neighbor.
So the reason why these discussions even bother me is because it feels like everyone's just frantically waiting to figure out what information they can grab to go use as a tool to attack the other side, which is not beneficial to anyone. So I would encourage you to not jump to conclusions either. Like, there is a lot of evidence now that this probably wasn't a left-winger, but you can imagine a situation where in recent months he quickly became left-wing, and that would keep our analysis the same, which is this is a tragedy. We denounce political violence, obviously, and we want to figure out how we can continue to advocate on behalf of our principles, our pro-democracy views, and I think it's essentially how we've been doing it, at least in this community, and making sure we do so in a way that's not needlessly divisive, but clear and unapologetic in our stances, in a way that makes clear the dangers of the MAGA ideology without dehumanizing people who have fallen into that ideology. I think, again, we do a good job of that, but maybe other people should shift a little bit, tone down a little bit, and then I'll, wherever I can, be as mindful as possible. But it also would not be acceptable if this guy does end up being a left-winger, as seems increasingly unlikely, for MAGA to use this as an opportunity to just exploit what is a tragedy to then call a big swath of people evil and degenerate and America haters and godless, we heard on Fox News, and all these different things. Clearly, this is not going to be a moment of unity, so that's sad. But it's stunning seeing how quickly people are willing to jump back into the most divisive rhetoric. Like they, all the political opponents of us, they tried to kill Trump. What? As far as we know now, which is the information you have to go off of if you're making these big, bold political statements, is a registered Republican conservative, came from a pro-Trump family, gun enthusiast who was wearing gun enthusiast merch, a pro-gun influencer merch, whenever he tried to assassinate Trump, and was a part of a gun club, that he tried to assassinate Trump. So how is that at all something that you can then point the direction of Democrats? I don't get it. And even if we learn more, it's not acceptable to do those sorts of generalizations. We should all oppose the action of this shooter, regardless of his ideology, and all use it as an opportunity to be introspective about how we can boldly, strongly advocate on behalf of our political views, because that's democracy, and that's beautiful, especially with the stakes of this election, while doing so in a way that isn't needlessly demonizing. But I think I'm on an island in that being my takeaway. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. As we continue to learn more, I will bring it to you, but I'm just sort of sad. I am. So let me know if you are as well. And if you want to get extra content daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below.